So Dale, I've been reading this amazing book called The Confident Mind by Dr. Nate Zinzer. And one of the first things I highlighted in this read is this really interesting quote from Eli Manning. So he's on this interview with ESPN back in 2011, and they start asking him how he thinks of himself in comparison to someone like a Tom Brady. And his response was this: yeah, I consider myself in that class. And Tom Brady, he's a great quarterback. So thinking about this quote, like, that's a very audacious thing to say, particularly when someone like him at that time had a league high of 25 interceptions.
Yes, and he may have gotten some of that confidence because years before in 2008, he actually beat Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl to win his first one. And actually, that confidence helped him out a lot, because then just months later, after this audacity of this statement was brought out to the ethosphere there, they won their second time against the New England Patriots, where Eli Manning went 2-0, making it a perfect record for him in the Super Bowls against, you guessed it, Tom Brady both times.
Yeah, because I believe he made this statement in August, and then they ended up winning that Super Bowl in February.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So you can see how far confidence can take you when you got it right in your mindset.
Absolutely. The self-belief that Eli Manning possesses, it's amazing. Hey everybody, I'm Scott Schwertly.
And I'm Dale Dameron.
And we are mental performance coaches at GritBase, where we create customized mental performance strategies to help hockey players just like you become more confident, calm, and mentally tough so they can succeed on and off the ice. And we're also the host of this podcast, Hockey Combat Mindset, which is all about helping you win the war in your mind and become a stronger and more capable hockey player. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
And congratulations, we have all made it to episode number 2. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing how to harness composure, calmness, and confidence in your game. And you know what? We're going to get to that on the other side.
So the year was 1993, and I was introduced to the sport of hockey for the very first time. In fact, it was the month of May, and the Stanley Cup Playoffs were in full swing. So as a Southern California native, my television was dialed into, obviously, the Los Angeles Kings as they were battling against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So looking back, I didn't realize this at the time, but I actually got to witness what has really become one of the best playoff series of all time. In fact, when I was looking this up on YouTube, it was amazing just to follow the comments thread, because everybody still has the same warm fuzzies about this playoff series. So yeah, it definitely was a big one. I still recall some of the biggest names of that series: Doug Gilmour, Wendell Clark, Dave Andreychuk, and then obviously on the Kings side, other big names like Luc Robitaille, Rob Blake, Wayne Gretzky, and his bodyguard, Marty McSorley. So if you're not familiar with this series, or maybe you are, specifically the thing I want to highlight is round 3, where the players really started to become unhinged. Specifically, Doug Gilmour, who is the captain of the Leafs, he was moving up the ice, and that's when he was actually laid out by Marty McSorley.
You're joking, right? Marty McSorley laid someone out as he came up the ice? That's insane to hear that.
Yeah, surprise,
For
right?
real.
So in this instance, obviously, Doug Gilmour is the captain. He's getting laid out. So his teammate, Wendell Clark, comes to his rescue, obviously in typical Wendell Clark fashion. And a fight then happens or ensues between Clark and McSorley. And then shortly after that, a second fight emerges. It's the Kings' Dave Taylor versus Todd Gill of the Leafs. And then another fight, or more sort of a confrontation, emerges, and this is between the coaches, Pat Burns of the Leafs and Barry Melrose of the Kings.
Man, so even the coaches are getting involved on this. I would imagine if you were there at this game, the intensity probably was very next level, emotions running super high for not just the players, but all the fans in the crowd too, right? They have got to be eating this up.
Oh, yeah, it was insane. And as a TV spectator, I mean, it was incredible to watch.
Right, I would imagine.
And speaking of watching, if you actually Google or search this particular series, again, round 3, Kings versus Maple Leafs, 1993. You'll find the video on YouTube. I think there's several options to watch from. But the interesting thing to note is if you actually fast forward to the 404 mark on this, you'll see the camera zoom in on Wayne Gretzky, obviously the greatest player of all time. And what is he doing? He's actually just sitting there being completely calm and not participating in this madness.
He's focused on the game at hand, right? I mean, it's not to say he's not watching it. It's not like he's not aware of what's going on around him, but he's not letting it drive him, right?
Yeah. He's totally in his own space, worried and focused on his own thing. And that to me just embodies really where we want to take this conversation, is that he has this absolute focus. He's calm, he's composed, he's confident, and ultimately this sense of leadership that he's modeling for himself and for his others is what allowed the Kings to eventually win that series. And I think it has a lot to do with watching their captain lead with confidence.
I would agree with that. And one thing I want to kind of point out here too, as kind of like a funny side nature, is I would say Gretzky, just like many great players, probably practices this calmness. But having someone like Marty McSorley be your bodyguard for a lot of your career probably helped him stay calm in this moment, right? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't really have to worry about getting lit up
Yeah,
as
yeah.
much as maybe someone else.
Yeah, if I had a bodyguard, I'd probably be a lot more calm than what I am.
Yeah, it sounds like we could maybe try to find our own McSorley to kind of follow us around so we can stay calm. But you know what? The greatest thing about that is we're going to give you some tips in this episode that you don't have to have your own Marty McSorley. You can have it mentally, right? Be mentally tough, which is what we're always gunning for here in this podcast.
Exactly.
So, side note here, just to kind of change it up before we get into our first point. In my professional background, I have a lot of background in sales. One thing that I've heard a lot in my training and my career is you want to always keep yourself composed, very much like Wayne Gretzky did, right? In sales, you're going to hear a lot of no's, and that's what you always hear from everyone, right? However, I would say that it's not just no's, it's also no replies. Mm-hmm. You're going to reach out to a ton of people, and they don't know who you are. They're not going to get back to you every single time. So you have to not let yourself get down over not hearing anything, right? Or hearing a no. It isn't healthy. It's going to really eat away at you. It's going to really hurt you a lot in the long run. But at the same time, though, you might get that yes. And that yes actually might make your whole year, right? You might just sell one thing on the spot, a huge package that might be more than you've ever made. Do you want to just rest on your laurels on that and just stop working? Well, no, you don't want to get too high either, right? Mm-hmm. You can revel in it. You can be excited about it, but it's not healthy for you to get out of practice. You'll become extremely lazy, and you're going to get your focus will just go away. So the main theme here that I've heard through sales is don't get too high, don't get too low. You want to stay right there in that middle, right there in that sweet spot. Watch your teammates get in those fights like Wayne Gretzky did, but be composed on the bench and be focused on your next shift because you know what you're going to get done.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and it's also a testament to that really in life. I mean, there's always a season for everything, right? Like you're going to have low seasons in life where maybe you're not closing any sales, and you're going to have great seasons in life where everything is sort of going in your direction. But yeah, if you can kind of always stay that middle ground, it's a good, healthy place to be at all times. And that's a great transition into our first point here, which is you want to stay composed. And that's what it's all about. It's about maintaining control over your emotions, your thoughts, your actions, even when things are getting rough or not going your way in something like the heat of the game.
Very much so. And here's why composure is so important in the game. It's going to help out with your decision making. Composed players make smarter decisions. So when you are composed, you can think clearly and you make the right choices. This could be with passing the puck, taking a shot, defending against the opponent, making a hit at the right time, or making that great easy save because you're in the right position, right? Your decision making is on point because you're composed. You're not getting rattled is the main thing.
Yeah, and if you're making smart decisions, you're obviously going to be reducing mistakes. So if you think about mistakes that are often associated to the game of hockey, emotional outbursts, people losing their cool, going in the penalty box when they don't need to, where these unnecessary mistakes that they're costing you, they're costing your team. So it's important, obviously, to stay composed so you can avoid these really costly errors.
And another thing, too, is you don't have to wear the C or an A on your jersey to be a leader. We all know that. But just like the great one with Wayne Gretzky, composure sets the example for your teammates. If they look down the bench and they see Wayne Gretzky sitting there and he's not getting rattled and he's also not getting overly excited, right? Thinking that, well, this game is ours because we are owning them in the fight department or owning them on the scoreboard. You inspire confidence in your team. It's going to lead to better cohesion and teamwork on the ice. They're going to follow your example in what you're showing and how you lead them.
Yeah, so when thinking about Wayne Gretzky and the leadership that he exemplifies, it reminds me of this classic story from the Cherokees, where this wise elder is talking to his grandson, and he's talking about the battle that rages really in every person's mind, that if you're like a Wayne Gretzky and you're sitting on that bench, you kind of have two paths that you can take. And so specifically, he talks about this struggle between two wolves, that one wolf embodies qualities like courage, discipline, teamwork, determination, self-belief, which is a big theme of our conversation today. And then there's the other wolf, which represents negativity, fear, doubt, selfishness, and just really anything destructive. And so out of curiosity, the young boy's like, this is really intriguing. So he asks his grandfather, well, out of these two wolves, which one's going to emerge victorious? And his grandfather responds, well, it's the one that you feed. And obviously, in a case like this, we're highlighting Gretzky quite a bit, but you can tell which wolf he feeds, right? He's feeding the one that is courageous, the one that's disciplined, the one that has self-belief, the one that's not going to get into these petty affairs of not having emotional control.
It's obvious when you listen to that story which wolf you want to feed, correct? Mm-hmm. But you think, who would choose to feed the second wolf? Well, I think it's a natural inclination of everyone to feed the second wolf without meaning to.
Yeah, Marty McSorley.
Yeah, he's gonna spark that negativity, that fear, that destructive tendencies is that gonna come from it, from that hit he may deliver to you when he's out on the ice. So, feed the good wolf, right? So one thing we want to recommend here is, in order to stay composed, and we're gonna get into some of these more in depth, but develop those pregame mental routines, right? Practice mindfulness techniques before your next game. You've seen videos, pictures of NHL players before a big game. They're on the bench or they're sitting up in the stands, even in the stadium, listening to their music, just taking it in. Goalies are really big about this. These, techniques, these mind techniques that they try to develop as they go on into the game. So these strategies can help you maintain your cool under pressure and make rational decisions that benefit your team.
Oh yeah, I remember last year during the Stanley Cup playoffs. When the Florida Panthers, I think it was in the second or third round, the cameras kept zooming in on Sergei Bobrovsky, and he was always in this meditative state after every whistle was blown, and just the amount of composure that he was able to sort of harness and obtain is just impressive. So, yeah, as you mentioned, everybody's going to have their own way of getting to that sort of composed mental state. You know yourself better than anybody else, so choose a pregame or even
during the game,
routine that's going to work for you.
I was thinking of Devin Levi, one of the goalie prospects for the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know if you've seen the videos of this.
I have not,
but during the TV timeouts of games, and I think he's done this in college as well, but he's brought it into the NHL in some of the games that he started in. During the TV timeout, goalies will tend to go over to the bench, right? They may not talk to the players, but they'll be they're getting water just like the rest of the players are getting. He gets out of the way of the ice scrapers. He goes into almost a Jedi-like stance, and will just face the net. And he is in his own, he's all internal. It's all mental.
That's amazing.
And I'd have to look up the quote, but it goes back to something his father kind of said to him about the Jedi mindset. And he looks like Qui-Gon out there, just waiting for that battle with Darth Maul, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty fantastic. And he's gotten up to the NHL level at a very young age. He's got a lot to prove, but it's worked for him so far.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and that's a great transition point. The fact that he can kind of center in like that, recenter himself. And that's a great transition into our second point, which is kind of a cousin of being composed. And that's the idea of staying calm. So they sound a little similar, but they're actually a little bit different. We've got a few recommendations that are and techniques that sort of make calmness stand apart from composure. So we're going to go and jump into that. So if you think about the idea of staying calm, it's closely related to compose, but it's a little bit different. And this is more about kind of what you just talked about there, about finding this inner tranquility. It's sort of the Qui-Gon of sort of hockey techniques here. So the great thing about staying calm, probably one of the most important components of it, is it allows you to stay in the present moment. That obviously, as we've talked about before, hockey is a game of managing chaos. There's never anything that's going to be that predictable. So it's the idea of finding ways to get yourself into a present moment to help calm yourself when you're in the mix of this chaos that we're talking about. So one of the sort of hallmarks of staying calm is breathing. I'm not going to get into that in too much detail right at the second. We will carve out some time for it, but to help you stay in the present moment, long story short here, breathing is one of those ways to get you dialed in.
Definitely. And with that breathing, it's going to help you perform better under pressure, which we talked about before, right? Those critical moments of the game, which may not even be game-breaking moments, but they're critical because they're the times that you are on the ice and the times that you can influence there. So we're going to take a quick break, and I believe when we get back, we're going to go into a little bit more about breathing and breathing techniques and what it can bring as far as like some self-love to yourself. Getting a little redundant there saying self too many times, but they're bringing the love into your mindset and what you can bring into the game.
Discover your hockey player type in just 3 minutes. Are you the tenacious bear or perhaps the agile cheetah? Introducing Primal Score, our free assessment to help you unleash your inner beast. It's time to take the limiter off your potential. Claim your edge by taking this fast and free assessment that's designed to help hockey players just like you achieve their full potential. Go to yourprimalscore.com to get your personalized results. Again, that's yourprimalscore.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. So years ago in a previous career, I was actually a police officer here in Nashville, Tennessee. Big moment in my life was going through the police training. It was a big growth point for me. And during that police training, while we were in the academy, we went over breathing exercises a lot. In that line of work, there was one main reason to control your breathing, and it all led back to your heart rate. Slower, more rhythmic, deep breaths help lower your heart rate. And there was 2 reasons as to why you might want to lower that heart rate as a police officer. The main reason is a worst case scenario one. If you're injured and actually bleeding out, slowing your heart rate, it simply means less blood loss, at the moment. So you can actually save your own life or give yourself a little bit more time while you're waiting for the medics or your backup to arrive to maybe administer more medical help to you. The other reason to slowing your heart rate is not nearly as brutal. It is more about keeping yourself calm in stressful situations. And I'm not talking about a fight all the time. You will deal with belligerent people, right, who do want to fight, and you got to make sure you're calm and focused on your training. But you also might just need to be focused on a difficult conversation with someone you're dealing with, right, in the public, or even your colleagues. You want to be ready for every single situation. And I know for me personally, myself, this is something that I carry with myself even to this day. If I'm in the middle of a workout or a hockey game and my heart rate is getting too high and I'm on the bench, I will take those very deep breaths and it will help lower. I can actually actively feel my heart rate lower, and it just makes me more focused and not feel like I'm out of control. So I know we're going to get a little bit more into the breathing exercises here and what those mean.
Yeah, and I know in my former life, I did a lot of public speaking training, and I would talk about the exact same thing about the 5 zones of heart rate. And also, I'm a former triathlete, so was always conscious of either doing zone 2 workouts or zone 4 workouts, and I'll explain that in real quick. But as you're talking about, there are 5 zones. There's zone 1, which is you sitting on your couch. That's like the white zone. Usually that's like 60 to 80 beats per minute. And then if you get off that couch and you start to go for a walk, you get into the yellow zone. If you turn that walk into a run, you're in the red zone. If you start doing fartleks and sprints, you're in the gray zone. And if you had no business at all doing anything athletic, where you start to lose bodily control and function, you're in the black zone. And so I would always tell presenters that when you're going to go up there and give a talk, a great presentation is like having a conversation. So just like if you're having coffee with a friend at Starbucks, you're not in that gray or black zone. You're in that white zone, sort of that, again, you sitting on your couch, or maybe you're in that yellow zone if you get excited about a certain topic. And that if you want to be a great presenter, the same thing is true. You want to be in that white or yellow zone when giving a talk. Obviously, presenters, they tend to freak out before giving a talk. So they're sitting there at their, behind the stage or whatever, and they may be in that gray zone or red zone. And obviously, those are dangerous places to be because your heart rate is way up there and you need to get it minimized. So 2 quick recommendations on how do you actually reduce your heart rate, and how do you do this through breathing techniques? Well, the first one I would recommend is the Navy SEAL approach, which is 4x4 breathing. It's also known as box breathing. So if you're sitting on the bench, you're about to start your next shift, and you want to get dialed in, you want to reduce those anxious feelings, do 4x4 breathing. So at the bottom of your breath, you wait for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you inhale, and you deliberately take 4 seconds to inhale. So I'm going to do this faster than normal time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And at the top of that breath, you wait for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then a big exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. So you rinse and repeat. Do this for about 2 to 3 minutes, and it will lower your heart rate by about 20 to 30 seconds per minute. So again, if you think about a Navy SEAL, they're out there doing that critical mission. They're about to take that sniper shot. They're about to run into a building that's on fire. Again, practicing 4x4 breathing is going to get you into a more stable and relaxed mindset and sort of body composition because, again, you're controlling your breathing.
That's perfect. That's great to take with you. And one great thing about having this on podcast, too, is if you need to re-listen to that, just feel free to rewind and focus on that during your own breathing exercises as you get used to your new routine.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about what we do at GritBase is we actually do sort of custom breathing exercises for our clients. So if that's something that intrigues you, definitely check everything out at gritbase.com. And then the other thing I want to talk about, sort of option number 2, is a thing called conscious breathing. So this is what you want to do prior to stepping on the ice. So when you're thinking about, if you're that type of person that actually likes to visualize and do some of those, pre-game rituals, one thing that you want to add to your pre-game ritual is conscious breathing. So the best way to look at conscious breathing is really kind of in 3 stages. There's the insight stage, the incentive stage, and the intention stage. So let me kind of briefly explain each one of those. So in the insight stage, this is you taking insight. So this is you being aware of what's going on with your body. Is your heart rate really high? Is it really low? It's really about just getting the insight, collecting the data of yourself and what's going on. Once you have that insight, my mentor and friend, Dr. Saul Miller, says the way to then take that information is to start to look at your breath, whatever's happening in your body, and start to look at it as sort of like waves in the ocean. That if you think about waves, they're constant, they're stable, there's a calming flow to them. So listen and feel for that cadence of your own breath. And by thinking about your breath as these waves, that's where you're going to start to gather that insight. Once you have the insight, it moves into stage 2, which is all about the incentive. So what you want to do here is use this opportunity as a chance to really sit back and relax and hone in on your breathing. And what I want you to do is really find the incentives for why you play hockey. So you can kind of look at this incentive section as more of like the visualization component of breathing. That you want to imagine maybe the smell of the arena, the feel of the skates on your ice, maybe the roar of a cheering crowd. So as you start, again, focusing and centering in on your breathing, start thinking about the things that incentivize you, the things that make you love this game so much. And then finally, the 3rd stage is all about intent and intention. So this final component is really about just breathing with sort of this deliberate action or with this intentionality, that you again are imagining your breath as energy and that you are the manager, and that this whole last stage here really in a nutshell is kind of about energy management. So your breath, your thoughts, they're all developing energy, they're all moving through your body, and so you want to be able to direct that energy. You want to feel it in your hands, you want to feel it in your feet, you want to feel it in your lungs, you want to feel it in your head, and you want to feel it in your eyes. So again, Your breath is your energy. You're the manager. You want to move through these things with this sense of intentionality. So, quick recap on conscious breathing. Again, this is what you want to include in your pregame ritual. It's about first insight. It's listening to yourself, thinking about your breaths, really kind of like waves of the ocean. Then you want to sort of incentivize yourself by then empowering that breath with these sort of powerful thoughts about why you love the game so much. And then this third stage again is about intentionality, about letting the breath become energy and let it fuel and flow through your body, so you can activate your hands, your feet, your eyes, and so forth.
All right. And all of this leads to staying calm. These conscious breathing, visualization, progressive muscle relaxation, all these techniques will help you maintain a clear mind and a steady heartbeat, even in the most stressful situations on and off the ice. All right. So with that, we're going to move to point number 3, staying confident. And for this point, we're going to go back to the 90s again, actually the next year in the playoffs that we talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I really do love hockey from the 90s. So, yeah, I love this story that you're about to share.
So, as we all know, the Rangers and the Devils, they don't like each other. These are two teams that have a pretty bitter rivalry. Back in the 1994 playoffs, the Rangers were facing the Devils in the Eastern Conference Finals. The series was very tight. The Rangers were actually down 3-2, facing an elimination game in Game 6. The pressure obviously was immense, and Rangers fans hadn't won a cup since 1940.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of desperation amongst a fan base that's already pretty rabid to begin with.
Yeah, they're tough.
Very, very tough. So on the day of Game 6, the Rangers captain, Mark Messier, boldly declared to the media that the Rangers would win that game tonight. His exact words were actually, quote, "We will win tonight." And if you remember, if you're around hockey at that time, or I think that's still shown to the day, you can actually, they always love to show the clip from the newspaper that has his quote right there, front and center, very bold. And it is a bold statement, one that we don't very much see in sports. And I would actually argue that in hockey, we see it even less because they don't want to take that, sole lone wolf mentality. They want to be part of the big team.
Yeah.
But one thing here is that we obviously know that he's confident in himself, but I think it actually comes more from that he was confident in his team.
Yeah,
and that's where a lot of this statement came from. So the game takes place on May 25th, 1994, in New Jersey, and the things don't look too good for the Rangers there from the start. The Devils jump out to a 2-0 lead, but Messier did not let his confidence falter, and his leadership then began to shine through as the game went on. He took control of the game, scoring a natural hat trick in the third period. That's 3 consecutive goals by him in the game.
Amazing.
His goals not only tied the game, but they also gave the Rangers the lead, and they ultimately secured that 4-2 victory, forcing a Game 7. His performance in Game 6 is often considered as one of the greatest single-game efforts in NHL playoff history. His guarantee and then his subsequent hat trick epitomized his role as a clutch playoff as a clutch player and a leader who not only could rise to the moments, but also inspires his team when it mattered the most too. It kind of goes back to what we said earlier about the players looking at Gretzky when he kept calm. Mm-hmm. These players looked to Messier when he gave that statement and then also followed it up on the ice.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, I don't want to age myself here, but I remember being, I think I was 16 or 17 when this game was on, and I remember watching it live, and it was incredible.
So the rest of the story, just to cap it off, the Rangers obviously beat the Devils. Well, not obviously, but they do go on to beat the Devils in Game 7, and they use that to propel them to the Stanley Cup, and they beat the Vancouver Canucks in a thrilling 7-game series. And if you talk to any Rangers fan to this day, they will always bring up 1994, mainly for their own sake, but everyone remembers the Mark Messier story.
Yeah. I think that was the era when you had was it Mike Richter in goal and Brian Leach, right, on defense. I mean, that was an amazing team. I mean, I would be confident in my team if I had those guys on.
Yeah, and that's not to take away from the Devils either. They had Brodeur in net still. He was young at the time, but it was peak hockey for sure in the 90s.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, good days of hockey back then.
So just to cap it off, confidence is the crown jewel of emotional control in hockey. When you believe in your abilities, you're going to believe not only in your abilities, but you're going to believe in your team's abilities. Then it's going to help you and your team and be more likely to succeed.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, confidence, I mean, it's going to fuel your performance. I mean, so obviously it's the catalyst for self-belief, which is one of the most important things you can have as a hockey player. So if you believe in yourself, if you're confident, obviously you're going to be performing at your full potential. It's also great for resilience.
That's right. Confidence helps you be a more resilient player by bouncing back from your mistakes and allowing you to view your setbacks as opportunities for growth. I love the word opportunities because it's not focusing on the negative, it's focusing on the positive. And in order to be resilient, you have to focus on the positive impact that you're going to make on the ice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then it's also great for influence. I mean, we've already talked about Gretzky today. You just talked about Messier. I mean, confidence is contagious. Your teammates are going to see it. And if they can experience and feel your leadership because you are confident, I mean, everybody is just ultimately going to benefit from it.
So when you exude confidence, you're going to inspire your teammates to believe in themselves and also then in turn take pride in your hockey club. So how do you generate and maintain that confidence going forward? Well, a crucial attribute to that comes from honestly 3 key factors, with that first one being previous success. And what is one thing that we hear about a lot when you look at teams as they run into the playoffs, right? Well, are they new or have they had playoff success already before? And teams that have had that playoff success in the past, or players more specifically that have had that playoff success in the past, tend to be leaned on more in the postseason just because they've been through it, they know it. And also a lot of it is because they have that mind, they have that memory built in that they can rely on when it gets to the tough moments. They know how to handle that pressure.
Yeah, and at the time of this recording, we're just, I think, 1 day away from the start of the Stanley Cup Finals between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. And obviously, a lot of people are leaning on the Panthers right now just because they have that previous success from last year. They can rely on it. I know Chris Knobloch got some recent criticism for comparing the Panthers to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, that's a little scary.
Yeah, but there is something important about having previous success, that you've got this track record that you can rely on. I mean, it's again why a lot of teams bring on veteran players. It's because they have the experience. They bring that to the table that the young players simply don't have, and that builds confidence for the entire hockey club.
To keep it on the Edmonton Oilers, if we all remember back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, the Oilers were winning draft lotteries almost every single year, and they would get these top first round picks that were franchise players. You got the Ryan Nugent Hopkins, you got the Taylor Halls, you got all these players that were supposed to be franchise changing, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people talked about the fact of they would ask these questions. Well, why do they have all these top first round picks and they're not being successful? And a lot of that came from they didn't have the build of the team fully built out just yet. But at the same time, a lot of it came from, well, they don't have the previous success. All they have to fall back on is losing, right? And so that's something you got to get your team out of. And it starts individually, and then it goes to the team mindset after that. And what's a great way to do that, Scott? It goes into the next part about planning and preparation, right? Individually, you want to focus on your physical, your skills, your mental. That will help you remember how successful you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that last statement, it's because they didn't have Corey Perry.
Obviously, it's a great way to get you to the Stanley Cup final. It's not a great way to win it all the time, but you get there at least.
But in all seriousness, yes. I mean, planning and preparing, obviously, the second component of this is that you got to be willing to put in the hard work. That, with anything, there is no overnight pill that you can take that's going to make you this amazing, agile, fast, aggressive hockey player. You got to put in the work. You got to plan and you got to prepare. And then if you put in that work, then you can pull from it. And that's what's really going to build your confidence moving forward.
Which gets us to our third key factor here, fostering that positive self-image. You are your harshest critic. I can say that about myself. I'm definitely my harshest critic. I think, Scott, you would agree on your side as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And, sometimes we always talk about that being a not the best trait, but honestly, you need to be your worst critic, right? Because at the same time, you're also one that can foster that self-image and make it a positive, right? If you don't need to listen to that outside noise like we talked about in episode 1, there's a lot of commotion out there, a lot of noise that are honestly going to lean towards the negative, just how our world is. So you have to foster that positive self-talk, that planning. You know how well you are. And honestly, as we talked about, I believe in the last episode, it comes down to just simply saying to yourself out loud, I'm a great hockey player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think an important component in all this with a positive self-image is having some self-compassion for yourself. You're like, yeah, obviously it's going to be easy to criticize and get down on yourself, but yeah, you got to move away from those negative thoughts and start thinking more positively about yourself. It could be what you just said there by, doing something so simple as an affirmation where you can look at yourself in the mirror every time you're brushing your teeth in the morning. Like, look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a good hockey player, or I'm a great hockey player. But again, it's all about having self-compassion, practicing self-care. Those are, I know it sounds a little new agey probably to some folks, but this stuff works. If you can love yourself, and we talked a lot about breathing in this episode. Again, my mentor friend, Dr. Saul Miller, talks about one of the best ways to love yourself is to practice your breathing. So again, let me repeat that. The best way to love yourself is to focus on your breathing. That's another one of these techniques to practice self-care and self-compassion.
That's great. And it's something that you should take with yourself every day. It doesn't even have to be a game day, and it doesn't have to be with hockey like we talked about before. These are things to carry with you through life to help increase your positive self-image and whatever you're tackling that day. It can only help you going forward. Scott, I believe you have a good exercise for everyone kind of going forward to kind of take with them to maybe help build that confidence.
Yeah, obviously one thing that we're always going to suggest is, confidence is such a important part. And I know even at the top of this podcast, I mentioned a book called The Confident Mind. That's a great read. Highly recommend it. It covers this exact topic in a very granular format. But if you're seeking and wanting confidence, read that book. It's amazing. But one of the things mentioned in that book too is that you don't, once you're confident, it doesn't mean you always stay confident, right? It's kind of fleeting, and you have to always be working towards it. And so one of the things that we would recommend is, create a confidence journal, whether that's something analog where you actually go out and buy a physical journal, or if you want to do it digitally, maybe through your favorite app. But invest the time, invest the energy, be intentional about actually keeping notes on your level of confidence. So, if you're doing things well, write those down. If there are things you want to work on, write those down. If you want to use your journal as a way to sort of document and create affirmations, do that as well. But as long as that activity, whatever you're journaling, is going to sort of promote a positive self-image, then you're doing the right thing.
I think that's a great thing, because what better way to see your own benefit and your own growth than to read your own words, right? Or hear your own words right back to you and see how far you've come, and also just, live off of it, right? Live off that growth and that positive self-talk that, you are maybe your worst critic, but you're also your biggest fan at the exact same time.
Yeah, definitely.
So with that, I think we're going to go to another break real quick, and we'll come back with some parting advice and, wrap it up from there. All right, welcome back. So to wrap it up here, I wanted to make sure that we piggybacked off our last segment about that confidence journal that, Scott, you talked about with the listeners. If you start practicing this confidence journal, or maybe you're doing one already, we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear feedback. We would love to hear maybe how it's helped you out. Maybe if you have some specific situations where it's helped you out in your journey as a hockey player. Even if you do a confidence journal for things that are not related to hockey, if it's still something that you benefit from and you get that positive self-image, we would love to hear feedback from you. You can obviously reach us on social media sites or at our emails. That's scott@gritbase.com or dale@gritbase.com. And we would love to hear from you and talk with you about it going forward.
Yeah, we definitely would love to receive those confidence journals or see what you've put together on your end. It's always exciting to see how those things actually make a positive impact. So with all that said and done, just a quick recap on what we've covered here today. Obviously, a big part of our discussion is about emotional control in hockey. And so really the three sort of tenets that we want you to be mindful of is really how to stay composed, how to stay calm, and how to stay confident. that if you can accomplish those three things, it's going to allow you and really empower you to elevate your performance, to be a more valuable asset for your team, and just to be a healthier person in general. So again, you want to be sort of that Mark Messier or Wayne Gretzky. You want to lead by example and really have these three core attributes.
That's awesome. And honestly, I believe that's a wrap on episode 2. So again, from Scott and I both, we thank you all for listening. We want to make sure that you download our mental toughness awareness guide and learn how to become a more confident and fearless hockey player. All you have to do is simply go to gritbase.com/mental toughness to download your free copy today. We are also very active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and
Threads.
we would love to stay connected everywhere that you can find us. We post daily about mental performance strategies for hockey players. Just search for GritBase, that's at GritBase Hockey, and follow us on that platform. From Scott and I both, we want to wish you a great week, and you know what? We're going to see you next Tuesday.
You have been listening to the Hockey Combat Mindset Podcast with Scott Schwertly and Dale Dameron. New episodes release every Tuesday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a rating, provide a review, or make a topic recommendation for a future episode. Thanks again for tuning in, and join us next week for another episode.